And here we go. So welcome. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Deneen Diamond. I'm the lead for the Center of Excellence for Health. We have two fabulous guests with us today, and they are going to bring us their expertise and knowledge around restorative circles. And without further ado, I'm going to do a really quick bio, but I am going to let them introduce themselves as well. So again, this is from the Center of Excellence for Health. We're really excited about the session tonight, and it's 3:46, and here we go. So first, I'd like to introduce Christine Morgan Ahern, and she is currently working as ASDS Positive Education and Social Emotional Learning Coach. This opportunity has given her the combination of what she has learned through experience in 15 years of classroom teaching, and also uses her knowledge and skills that she has gained during her MED in counseling and psychology and 2 years as a high school guidance counselor. Jessica Bellis, not only is Jessica wearing a red, beautiful jacket for the Center of Excellence for Health, Jessica and I became personal friends when we went to the Rest and Renew weekend in Moncton with Blair and Jenny Abbas and Kiersted. And this is where I guess the fruition of the presentation came about. Jessica was telling me about the work that she does, and I thought, man, we need to show that to the teachers in New Brunswick. So here we are. So Jessica is a school counselor coach with ASDS. She has been a counselor for 8 years and absolutely loves her job. In addition to her professional experience, she holds a Master of Arts degree with a major in counseling psychology and is currently a certified Canadian counselor with the Canadian Counselor and Psychotherapy Association. So I will let them tell a little bit about themselves, but without further ado, I welcome Jessica and Christine. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Deneen. Christine and I are really happy to offer this PL opportunity on the power of circles. So my background is mostly in elementary guidance, and outside of work, I like to spend time with my family. I have 4 children, and I love being outside, and I love getting my nails done.
And her nails look beautiful, I can tell you. And I'm Christine. I've spent the majority of my career as a teacher from grade 1.
Christine, can I just interrupt real quick? We can't see you. You're not in the screen right now.
Oh,
there you
go. Now.
Perfect.
Sorry.
Perfect.
So I have spent the majority of my career as a classroom teacher. I spent some time as a guidance counselor. And I spend a lot of time also with my family, watching my children do their chosen activities. And I'm really happy to be here with you today.
So we'll get started. The restorative justice philosophy has roots in the Indigenous justice systems, and it's based on the idea that the well-being of a community and its members is preserved through communication, emotional connection, understanding, and meaningful relationships. Elementary, middle, and high schools in urban, suburban, and rural areas are using these practices both to build relationships and to decrease incidents of misbehavior, bullying, and violence, and to prevent such problems from occurring in the first place. So this afternoon, we will be discussing what restorative practices are and the value of utilizing circles in the classroom. And we will also provide helpful tips and guidelines for implementing circles. When I think about my style as a teacher, 2 words come to mind: community and communication. I want my classroom to be a place where students want to be, a place where they feel safe, loved, and valued. When students belong, they open up, and when they open up, they belong. These are some words that come to mind when I think about the term restorative practices: empathy, understanding, trust, respect, relationships, community, and safety. So restorative practices is not a discipline program, but it's rather a framework for how to approach all relationships in a school building. So for example, leadership to staff, staff to staff, staff to students, and student to student. Here are 5 principles that are central to restorative practices. So the first principle: a school is a community. Relationships are the heart of school communities, and we must work to build, strengthen, and restore these relationships. Students need social emotional learning to succeed. We must intentionally teach students self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. And accountability is achieved when someone understands the impact of his or her actions and then takes responsibility for the choices and then works to repair the harm done. This is achieved when educators do things with students, not to them or not for them. When someone does something that harms a community, the goal of an effective response is to heal and repair harm. Restorative practices are not a quick fix to student behaviors or disciplinary issues, but rather it's a school culture that's focused on relationships and high levels of support to create that long-term impact. Restorative practices show that although someone may have made a mistake, they can still make a positive difference. We all make mistakes. Some people mistakenly assume restorative practices is solely a conflict resolution process that comes into play after harm has occurred. However, this technique can be equally as effective in providing preventative factors for when future challenges arise. An example of restorative practices is using circles. Circles have the power to create and strengthen support systems between peers and lay the groundwork for a trusting classroom environment. Building positive relationships is a proactive approach, whereas learning the tools to resolve conflict can be responsive. This diagram explains the 3 levels of intervention as it applies to the use of restorative practices. Restorative practices are used at Tier 1 for prevention and Tiers 2 and 3 for intervention. And as you can see, the bottom of the triangle is Tier 1, building and strengthening relationships through community building circles. Tier 2 practices, including restorative conferences, allows participants to respond to conflict and harm. And then Tier 3 practices, including circles of support and accountability, are used to support reentry. So we are going to watch a 4-minute video on how dialogue circles are used in an elementary school in Oakland, California. So after the video, we're going to give you a few minutes to reflect upon the successes and challenges if you have implemented circles in your classroom. If you're new to the idea of a community or a restorative circle, just consider what this could look like for your students. Feel free to use the chat box to contribute your successes or challenges.
When I was in Sullivan freshman year,
Oh, just a minute.
there was lots and lots of fights. I couldn't learn anything because it was like basically students in class would just
That's not the right video. Just hold on.
No worries, take your time. YouTube jumps for me all the time. It's very annoying.
Here we go.
Before I started doing circles in my class, I found it very difficult to start the academic day. Students had things that they wanted to share that had happened with them, things they were concerned about, and I had a very long line of about 30, 25 to 30 students every morning wanting to share personal time with me. It made it absolutely impossible to start the academic day. After the presentation of circles in our staff development, I knew that would be the best way to have each student share and be heard in the classroom. Here at Glenview, every teacher holds circles for classroom management, for resolving conflicts, and also to involve students in activities. Every day, I begin with mindfulness to really get the students focused and centered and ready for learning. I'm going to need you to either close your eyes or to look gently at the ground. The next thing I do in circle is a check-in with a scale from 1 to 5. This allows me to assess whether or not they're ready to learn. Okay, I'm a 5, and I have a lot of things I need to get done today, but I'm looking forward to getting them done. Would anyone else like to share why you're a 5 today?
Today I'm a 5 because I can't wait for spirit week.
I'm a 1 because my head still hurts from Sunday.
In order to keep order in a circle, we use a talking piece, which is a symbolic piece to signify who has the floor, who's able to speak. At the beginning of the year, I asked the students what topics they feel as a class we need to discuss. The students write the topics and we place them in the cup. Oh, our next topic is going to be about stop bullying. How can you stop bullying?
But I think since most bullies bully through pain, you can try to see if you can help or make them feel better. If you see someone getting bullied, stand up for that person and tell the bully firmly and strong to stop bullying.
I like the idea of not being a bystander, because that's somewhat being part of the bullying process. If you see it happening and you don't say anything, but it takes a lot of bravery, a lot of courage to say, hey, that's not right. As part of a program called Restorative Justice, circles are also used to resolve conflicts that come up during the school day.
Sometimes at recess, Sydney and Imani would come over and just start talking about us and saying mean things about Janae.
Is it your job to make Janae's job at school hard?
No.
So you choose to either be the bully that you're being or to be someone's ally and make a better choice.
So if anybody would like to reflect on the successes or challenges or comment on how you would see your circles being implemented in your classroom, you can feel free and use the chat if you'd like.
I'm not going to use the chat, Jessica, but I will comment on the video that you just showed the audience and how she incorporated mindfulness at the very beginning of each of the circles. And I think that is something that as a teacher, I certainly put that into practice in the classroom. And my high school students, you would think that the high school students wouldn't be into that. And it got to the point where when they came in, they would ask, are we going to do our grounding and our mindfulness practice? Because as we spoke about before the call started, our energy can be very scattered. And especially when we're going through our day and we're going from class to class, and sometimes as adults, we think that we're the only ones feeling that way, but the high school students and most students need to learn techniques that help ground them and help them feel safe and ready to learn. And I loved that the teacher said, you know, I start the circle with a mindfulness practice so that they can be ready to embrace whatever the discussion's about.
I love that. Thank you, Deneen. There are many reasons for why gathering of people in a circle is powerful. Being in a circle allows us to experience each other as equals. When a group of people come together in a circle, they are united. The circle represents a fundamental change in the relationship between students and authority figures. So teachers or educators are not up at the front of the room just lecturing. And I love this quote, in a circle, we are all equal. No one is in front of you. No one is behind you. No one is above you. And no one is below you. So I'm going to turn the next few slides over to Christine.
Hi, thank you, Jessica. As Jessica has said, listening to someone's story is a way of empowering them. So let's take a moment to consider those who have been affected by harm. Connecting with these students is crucial for their sense of safety and for them to feel seen. As the adults working with youth, we are in a position of power, and we can use our influence to positively impact our students. So consider this connection. How we behave, how we communicate, and how we relate is the heart of restorative practice. Every interaction we have is an opportunity to build positive relationship, model our values. One building block of positive communication is affective questions and affective statements. This method of communication is beneficial to students both in and out of a circle. Affective questions build relationships, connect people, and help prevent things from escalating. This is a great opportunity to truly exercise your influence to help students. And in the larger picture, this building block of a new relationship is based in equality, respect, guidance, authenticity, honesty, and connection, leading to a restorative school culture. Affective statements include I messages and the communication of how you feel as a result of someone's actions. Explicit and detailed feedback is more meaningful to students than the quick good job. So for example, I am so proud of this class for working together so well. You are showing me that you care about collaboration as much as I do. Combining the use of affective communication throughout our day with the regular practice of circles creates a climate of care and connection in the school community. These school-wide practices enhance the school's capacity for problem solving and community building under almost any circumstance. So again, why would we choose to incorporate restorative circles into our classrooms? Restorative practices help to deal with misbehavior as well as more serious problems. In a traditional punitive discipline, this does not achieve the positive change in student behavior. Restorative circles emphasize a restorative approach to resolving conflict and preventing harm. Restorative practice is a process that can build community, resolve disputes, and manage conflict. Some of the benefits: with consistent use, restorative circles will help create a calmer and more focused classroom and school. And I think back to that video of the teacher starting her circle with mindfulness and focusing. Teachers using restorative methods in the classroom spend less time on managing behaviors and more time teaching. Students and teachers report more happiness and peace in their overall school experience. A great resource, if you're interested in learning more about restorative practices, is the International Institute of Restorative Practices, and it's found at www.iirp.org. So some tips: establish norms for the circle. You do this at the beginning of the year if possible with your students. Use a talking piece and or a centerpiece. The shape of the circle does matter. We don't want anyone to be able to hide, and students shouldn't have to lean or make an effort to see someone else's face. It's helpful to start with an icebreaker or a low risk check-in question. And even in the beginning, this may be it for your community circle at the beginning, because we want to create a culture of trust, and that doesn't happen right away. So we begin with low risk questions and work up to more intense or revealing questions. And teachers always answer the questions also, and the teacher sits in the circle with the students. Some more tips. Speak one at a time. Don't allow interruptions while others are talking. And this can be decided as a group in the beginning when you're establishing your norms, and figure out as a community, how will you address interruptions? So we don't want interruptions, and by doing this, you encourage everyone to listen while giving each of them an equal chance to respond. Speak when you have the talking piece. Seek to understand problems. Your circle's goal isn't to pass judgment and define punishment. Instead, challenge those involved to understand the conflict and how it affected others. So here's in a circle of some common guidelines. Number 1, respect the talking piece. Number 2, speak from your heart. Number 3, listen with your heart. Number 4, speak with respect. Number 5, listen with respect. Number 6, remain in the circle. And number 7, honor confidentiality. Community members of the circle play a part in developing the guidelines that make sense for their group. Respect of the talking piece is imperative, but the remaining guidelines should be co-constructed and agreed upon by the community. Restorative circle questions are used to address challenging behavior or address someone who was harmed by another's actions. Focus on solutions rather than assigning blame and seeking justifications for behavior. And this slide offers questions that a teacher or an administrator or a counselor can have at their fingertips when dealing with conflict that has happened. Having a common language that is used by the staff and students at a school can help with the continuity of expectation, and also help students gain agency as they learn a process for reflecting on their own behavior. When addressing challenging behavior, restorative questions can get to the heart of the matter. The questions can be tailored to your particular environment or use the language of your particular schools, your community guidelines for your school. But these questions here offer the general idea. Number 1, what happened? Number 2, what were you thinking at the time? Number 3, what have you thought about since? Number 4, who has been affected by what you have done? In what way? And number 5, what do you think needs to happen to make things right? There are also questions for the person who has been affected by the other's actions. Number 1, what did you think when you realized what had happened? Number 2, what impact has this incident had on you and others? Number 3, what has been the hardest thing for you? And number 4, similar to the other, what do you think needs to happen to make things right? So we're not asking the kids why. We're focusing on the facts of what happened, and we're involving the students in the restorative justice, if you will, portion is like, what do we need to do next? What needs to happen to make things right? And we're asking both sides to try to come up with a solution. This is a shift
Restorative thinking is a significant shift from punishment-oriented thinking. We are sometimes confused by the concept of making things right. But we do know that blame, shame, punishment, and exclusion are not working for our youth, for our teachers, or for our communities. Pushing youth out of the space and the community is the opposite of what they need. Misbehavior is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to learn needed skills, and we don't often seize this opportunity enough. Restorative practices are effective at addressing the disproportionality of discipline on students of color. Restorative practices give us new tools and help replace outdated and ineffective methods of punishment and suspension. Amos Clifford of the Center for Restorative Process developed a resource for the San Francisco Unified School District. I love this resource as it offers a clear framework and specific lesson plans for teachers who wish to implement the teaching of restorative practices using classroom circles. And the website that is indicated on the slide at the bottom is a direct download, a PDF copy. So you can download it, print it off, and have the lesson plans at your fingertips if you like. And I'm going to turn it back over to Jessica now. Thank you.
So you can make a curriculum part of your circles. So rather than waiting for a conflict to arise, look at your curriculum and think about ways you can meet curricular outcomes. And then it just becomes part of your classroom community. So for example, Jennifer Levy, a 6th grade teacher, uses circles not only to build relationships and respond to problems, but also for teaching and learning. Participating in restorative circles prepares students for circles on academic subjects. So for example, for Black History Month in February, Levy held a circle on civil rights. Her class was reading a book about Martin Luther King Jr. that talked about the racism he encountered early in life. The book spawned a very deep circle, both restorative and academic, Levy says. And the kids didn't know the word prejudice or what that meant. And so Levy used a circle to educate her students. And immediately after all circles, while the conversation is fresh in their minds, her students write about the circle in their journals. And so after the civil rights circle, Levy asked her students to write about why it's important to treat people the way they themselves want to be treated. Restorative practices are used to address and discuss the needs of the school community, build healthy relationships between educators and students, resolve conflict, hold individuals and groups accountable, repair harm, and restore positive relationships, reduce, prevent, and improve harmful behavior. We're going to watch another video, and this video gives us a snippet of how this is working in the Peel School District.
The use of restorative practices at David Leader has fostered a safer, more caring learning environment. It places a greater emphasis on responses to inappropriate behavior and seeks to connect rather than disconnect the school community. At David Leader, the use of classroom circles has been used as a tool for the implementation of character education and other curriculum objectives. Daily announcements suggest a character education check-in question suggestion that aims to foster discussion and strengthen classroom relationships. In addition, circles have been used to address specific concerns and challenges that individuals have experienced.
I think it's benefited our school community by offering staff, students, parents, and guardians a common language and a framework from which we can build and restore relationships.
Yeah, so my definition of a circle is a circle without boundaries, a circle that can pass beyond the limit, I guess. So as rectangles and squares, you have those corners where you can basically hide, but when you're in a circle, it's all round. You have no corners.
Circles have benefited my class in many ways. I teach an IGLD class, so one of the most difficult parts of the day are during times of unstructured social interaction, particularly recess. I find that using circles after recess brings down the energy of my class and refocuses us for an afternoon of learning. It also helps us to work on social skills, particularly conversation skills and listening skills, and builds stronger relationships from student to student and student to teacher.
In a core French classroom, students are able to express personal preferences to either or questions. Est-ce que tu préfères le sucré ou le salé? Je préfère le salé.
Je préfère le sucre parce qu'il est savoureux.
Integrating the framework of restorative circles with curriculum expectations helps to make students feel more connected to each other and realize that their thoughts, ideas, and feelings do matter.
We use circles to feel comfortable with each other and gain that relationship with your classmates, because at the first week of school we didn't really know each other, so that really helped us bond together and find things in common that we never knew we had with each other.
We use circles to address a problem or address an issue, or for another example, we used one to address an issue before it actually happened.
Well, it creates a strong bond, and over time that bond turns into a family. And actually to this day, we have class reunions every single month because our class is so strong together.
Circles are also an excellent way to evaluate and assess student understanding of the topic being discussed. In combining restorative circles with curricular content, we've found that our students feel safe enough to express themselves and to take those risks required personally and academically to be more self-confident and to be a much more rounded, responsible, and active student and member of the classroom community.
So what was different playing in a circle as opposed to in rows? Jay? Okay, you can hear everybody better. What else?
Yeah, everybody's equal, including the conductor.
Anytime there are a group of people doing anything together, every single individual is important. And when we sit in a circle, it gives everyone a chance to hear each other and to feel equal and important. Okay, how many people like the circles better than playing in row? Okay, how many people aren't sure quite yet? We have to do it a little bit more. Okay.
I use circles to co-construct rubrics in my high needs ESL class, as this gives opportunity to all students to participate in this learning process.
We've used formal conferencing, which is one aspect of restorative practices. A restorative conference is a very structured process in which the issues that the conflict is fully discussed, but probably more importantly, the impact that the conflict or the incident has had on others is explored through that process. And we found that to be very powerful for both the participants and the supporters, but most importantly, I think, for the student who caused the harm. For them to recognize and realize the impact that their choices have on the people that they love, their family members, the people that they work with at school. We have seen significant change coming from the inside out for students who have had that experience.
We've used restorative practices in conferences, in everyday interactions, and in some very serious situations.
situations that could have been very damaging to our relationship between the school and community and could have resulted in police charges or involvement. Instead, we've been able to strengthen those relationships and improve our reputation within the community.
So when a whole school has a restorative mindset, it's very important that everyone's on board. And the reason for that is when something happens, the students, the parents, the staff, everyone in the community is really focused on repairing the harm and educating the students and the participants and what happened and how to prevent it from happening next time.
So I love those two examples of the videos that we showed because it showed an elementary school using the circles and also a middle school because some people might think that restorative circles or community circles are just for elementary school, but you can use them and they can be quite successful at elementary, middle, and high schools even. And it showed you examples of how they can build community and also implement the curriculum. I love this continuum as it outlines all the ways the restorative approach is implemented in practice. Restorative practices can be proactive by making, developing, and maintaining relationships, as well as responsive by repairing harm caused by challenging behavior or conflict. The circle process provides the means for everyone to belong and is significant under any circumstance. So for example, as a member of the classroom reviewing for a test, as a teacher sharing their highs and lows, as a principal sharing a favorite dessert, as a member of a team learning about winning and losing, as a kid who caused harm helping to fix things, or as a youth who has been hurt, helping others to fix things. The circle, for a while, flattens the hierarchy between classmates and peers, and between adults and students, and ultimately, everyone has a place. I would like to conclude by highlighting that restorative practices, whether proactive or responsive, emphasizes every school member's responsibility to the community. Thus, it is profoundly a relational practice. A restorative practices approach is more than a collection of protocols and activities. It is a mindset, a belief about building and restoring community. Now, we do offer a full day PL on this, and this is only a snippet. It's only a 45-minute presentation and introduction to restorative and community circles.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. That was absolutely amazing. And I'm a big believer in restorative circles, although I never called it that. But certainly Sandy even put in the chat about using it at workplaces. And one of the very first things that I would do as an administrator, especially when I was with my ESS teams, is I would set up the classroom as a circle. And it was amazing the difference that it would make instead of being in the rows or maybe in a theater, but allowing people to feel comfortable in that circle and more open and safe. And looking at people in the eye really makes a difference. So certainly there's a lot of research out there that supports all of the facts and information that you gave us tonight. But I believe that this is something that most teachers can do very easily, and it doesn't need to be done every day. But as I spoke about earlier, as the students get used to it, they actually ask for it. And I know, especially when I'm teaching yoga and different things like that, even when you teach yoga and you do it in a circle, the students seem to relax, or the participants seem to relax even just a little bit more, and it brings that energy down. So thank you so much. That was wonderful. If anybody has any questions and they want to ask a question, certainly you can put your mic on in the video, or you can just put it in the chat. And Sandy has a great comment in the corner. We get together as a team on Mondays, and I will suggest that for one of our team meetings to say, you know, let's try a restorative circle and see what that does. We do that with our desks around the conference room, but I think it would even change the energy and the dynamic if we just took the desks out of there and just had the circles without that barrier. Because as much as we think a desk is not a barrier, it can be a place where people hide. You know, our computers up is another place for people to hide. So being mindful of all those things that can maybe close the situation off and trying to open it a little bit more. So any questions from people that are on the call? You gotta love these teams. Oh, Rachel, thank you. Go ahead.
Hello, thank you. So that was a great presentation, and I do actually have a question. So for students who, well, high schoolers, and particularly high schools where they change classes throughout the day and they're not always with the same students, does it have the same effect with them just being connected to a few students in the school, where they're not, where maybe like if they do it in one class, but just one class throughout the day, but then they go to other classes and they haven't connected with other students in that way, does it have necessarily like the same effect?
Good question. Well, I guess I'll answer this as a former high school teacher. I think that building a connection with even one person in the building has positive impact. So I wouldn't want to see 5 circles a day every day, but if it depends on the structure of the high school. A lot of high schools are structured with a advisory period, and I think that is an awesome place to do a community circle in terms of building the community. If you're there's a French second language teacher in the Peel district video, and I relate to that as a French teacher, and I know that in French class when we are doing structures or communication, ways of learning to speak, we would use circles quite often, and there are a variety of types of circles you can use too. It's not always just one whole round circle, but I guess to answer your question, I think that you don't have to do it in every class, and that building community, even with one of your classes, will have positive impact for the students. I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in there.
I would agree.
Okay.
I would agree as well. And just to add to that, you sometimes you kind of get yourself in trouble as a teacher, because students will go to their next teacher and say, why can't we do it like Mrs. Diamond or Mrs. Bellis? And so you have to also tell the students that it's not appropriate for every class, and that, you know, everybody has their own way of teaching. So certainly I was guilty of that, but great question, Rachel. Thank you. I see a hand up for Amanda as well. Amanda, do you want to go ahead with your question?
Sure. Thanks for your presentation. I think for someone who may have heard the term restorative circles, but isn't really familiar with what it is or what it could look like, I think that is enough to grab on to take it to a next step. So I really appreciate your time. I see a lot of similarity with what you shared to things of the past, like quantum learning and class meetings. So I think it's again, a next step to building in a teacher's repertoire of what you do and how you connect with students. So I also celebrate the fact that I think it is very, very relevant, especially given COVID, and I think a lot of disconnection. I think that can provide a great solution to that. My first question was, you mentioned a great resource, the PDF, and you said the gentleman's name was Amos something, and I didn't catch his last name. Clifford?
Amos Clifford. Yep.
Okay.
Clifford, just like the big red dog.
Awesome. And again, I appreciate you mentioning that it wasn't like, and here's like your power pack, go out and buy like $150 from Amazon in the next 5 minutes. So I appreciate that. And even though I love Amazon, support them, have a class mortgage in, books. Anyway, and the other thing, I guess it's more of a suggestion and question. I know being a classroom teacher, having been, it's very, very difficult to change what you do every day until you see something different. So are there classes, like, do you have lists of teachers who may agree to host teachers coming to visit, like to see what that actually, like what restorative practices or circles might look like in a classroom? Because like, I know for me, even in seeing how someone else, not that it means you have to do it the same way, but even being able to visit somewhere that I could say, oh, like now I actually see it carried out. And that also might be something that you address, like the how-tos in the PL that you mentioned. But I guess it's just for me, I know I would benefit from seeing it in action. So I wondered if that's anything like a resource or a teacher list that may be considered to be generated for the future.
That's a really great suggestion, and I know one of the middle schools in my area started community circles, a school-wide initiative. So every Thursday morning, they do community circles. So every teacher is doing the same thing, although it might look a little bit different in the classrooms. They're talking, they have the same set of questions, and I'm sure I'm sure they would be welcome to having somebody come in and look at their way of implementing circles. I know it's been really successful for them, and they started this year, and it's been a really positive thing for both students and staff.
The only other thing I would mention, I promise I'm not looking for airtime, but I love that you more or less address the misconception that I think a lot of teachers have, that you need to have guidance training in order to make this effective in your room or with your students. And I think you've kind of debunked that is not a requirement, that as long as you kind of understand the theory of the purpose behind it, you can make it successful as a way to connect to a student. So I really appreciate that you didn't make it seem like masters in counseling required. So thanks for that.
And another thing I'll mention is in this resource, there are how many lessons?
I believe there are 6 lessons.
6 lessons to get started. This is a really great resource.
It even offers you a script if you want guidance on what exactly to say on day 1 or in circle 1, circle 2. And basically the first 3 lessons are introductory, but lesson 4 and lesson 5 are to be revisited as the practice of the circle becomes the norm.
Yeah. And that resource is free?
It's free. I downloaded it yesterday to make sure that it's still available, and I was able to find it. So
wouldn't it be wonderful to follow up this presentation with putting that on the COE website? Amanda's shaking her head because that's what she does for us.
I can see in my future.
Free opportunities. Yes, absolutely. With that, I am going to put the website in the chat. And ladies, that was absolutely fabulous. But I think that this would be a great segue to say, if you want more information and more resources, certainly we will share the information on the website, and I'll be reaching out to the ladies that presented tonight to make sure that goes on maybe in the next month or so that you know that you have that resource ready for September. And I see another hand up. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I really enjoyed it. And I'm familiar with those circles back in my home country from Israel. And when we used to do those circles, we used an item. So each time it was a different item, and if a student is talking, then is holding the item. And it's a way of respect, and everyone no one can comment or say anything or talk while a student holding his item in his hand. And every time it was a different item. Would you recommend doing that, or it doesn't seem that necessary?
The talking piece is a big, so when we said the talking piece, that is the item that you're referring to.
Okay.
So that's a key part. So that's so exciting to hear that fact you brought from Israel. That's
Yes.
amazing.
Well, I haven't experienced it yet in Canada, so I'm happy to know that it's possible and I can do it as well. And another thing I wanted to ask, if because we used to do it back in Israel as well, and I don't know if I can do it here, is to encourage students to ask questions for one another, and not just the teacher sharing a question. Maybe a student can ask a question as well and refer it to someone. Will you encourage that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because you mentioned they can be judgmental or criticize anyone, but still sometimes even if they're asking questions, it might not always sound it might sound critical or judgmental. Can you hear me well?
You cut out a little bit.
You're cutting it.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Ortal is one of my UMB education students, so thank you so much for coming. So she's just getting her education degree right now.
Oh, nice.
Yes, and she was sharing beautiful things that happen in Israel. So I'm very happy that in the education system, the circles are supported. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Rachel, I see your hand up again. I'm not sure if you have an additional question.
Yes, I do.
Perfect.
Sorry, I'm not trying to hog the conversation at all here.
No worries.
But I do have another question. I think this is a great concept, and once I get into teaching, I would love to implement this in my classroom somehow. And I've been thinking about suicide within schools a lot lately, and how, when I get into teaching, how could I ensure that suicide rates along my students and the schools are lower than what they currently are. So I don't know because, well, all students are different, but has there been any statistics or any research found specifically on how these circles can lower suicide rates?
I am not aware of any statistics surrounding specifically suicide rates, more so the happiness of students, the school culture as a whole, and reduced suspensions. But I visit schools and I do suicide awareness presentations at the high school level. And if teachers are comfortable presenting that topic, I think having a circle while presenting a difficult topic like suicide awareness would be awesome, because, and I mean, of course it would have to be after you built that trust and safety. Yeah, I think that's a good idea and a good approach.
And I think too, the happiness and being connected is also correlated with suicide rates too. So definitely.
Well, we all know the benefits of students when they feel connected and when they feel like they belong to it, that they do overall have they're happier. And that's what I love about restorative practices is that relationship building, because as educators, that's the most important thing.
100%. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. What a great segue to the end of the presentation, because we're speaking about mental health and the importance of feeling safe and connected in your schools. And I know that's something that as a province, we certainly are trying to increase those rates of the students that feel connected to the schools and making sure they have that positive connection in the school system. So the two of you, Jessica and Christine, are two prime examples of the beautiful professionals that we have here working in the province. So I want to say thank you again from the Center of Excellence for Health, and we really appreciate you celebrating Mental Health Month with us today. And I do believe that this is just the beginning of our I guess collaboration and making sure that restorative practices and circles are part of professional learning and education for not only our new teachers, but also the teachers that are in our system right now. So thank you so much. And you will be hearing more about the work of restorative circles for sure. And we are going to sign off. It's 4:41. I certainly try to end on time, and the questions were so great that we went overtime, which is fabulous. So Christine and Jessica, last thoughts, last comments are to you.
Well, I certainly appreciate everyone that tuned in today, and I think it's a process. So I just think of this as a stepping stone, and that you don't have to be perfect right away, and that choose something to implement, choose something small to implement, start small, and get the ball rolling.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
Jessica says ditto to that.
That's right.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It was lovely. I am going to start the recording. And again, thank you so much from the Center of Excellence for Health. Another great week of celebrating positive mental health in our schools. And I really appreciate you attending.
Thank you, Deneen.
Thank you, Deneen.